men identifying solely as their work is counterproductive to a value-driven life. And I think a lot of men get this confused. And I talk to men a lot because I care about men. And I'm building to this later on in the show. But I want to tell a story, a personal story. So my dad is a very, very successful business executive. He hasn't always been. He started as a lowly design engineer at a big firm. So he's a very, very small fish in a very big pond. And he eventually worked his way and navigated outside of the company to a bit to become a very, very successful corporate executive. And at one time, he was in the line to be the CEO of an engineering firm that he was at. He was about 2 years away from being made the CEO and anointed by the former CEO who was going to be succeeded by my dad. The board of directors was on board, everything else. But to get all of those things together, and by this point, I was in college. I didn't really see this up close and personal. My younger siblings did. My mother did. A lot of people in my family did, even though they were living in Florida at the time, and eventually moved back to Ohio, where I'm from and where I grew up. I remember just even talking with my dad and seeing his posture. My dad was at times overseas for a month at a time. He stopped working out. He didn't eat very well because he was at business dinners all the time. I remember I FaceTimed at one point and I saw his skin and I was looking at his face, obviously, because I was his face in front of the camera, and his skin was yellow. And I told him, I remember saying, I'm like, dude, like, if you keep doing this, if you keep working these 90 hours a week and trying to strive to be this massive big shot business guy. And by the way, my dad did not want the status of it. Like, my dad is very unplugged largely from the LinkedIn clout, from the media, from all these things. He doesn't really care about money all that much. So thankfully, my dad, I think, would have been spared from that. That wasn't what he was wanting to do. My dad just is really driven, and he's very into pushing himself to what he wants to do. And he saw an opening and he wanted to take it because he wanted to set his family up for generational wealth. And, you know, especially with my sister who's disabled. So it was a big deal for him. And he was driven because of that in many ways. And I remember saying that, like, I was thinking, like, I might lose my dad because of this. I mean, like, and apparently my mom and dad's marriage was apparently not great for a long time, obviously, because my dad was away so much. He wasn't able to spend as much time with my sister and my brother because he was away so much. They were in a very not great public school. My sister didn't have nearly the services she has because Florida doesn't have state income tax. Back home in Ohio, my sister was able to have a lot of educational resources thrown at her. And eventually, my dad, he called me once after this happened, a couple months after this happened, and said that he was stepping away after his options vested, and he was going to get a job, a lower position at another company. And he had an opportunity lined up, and he was going to take it. And I was very shaken up by that because I remember I asked him, like, you know, Dad, like, and that's when he told me also that he was going to be the CEO of this company. I said, well, I mean, Dad, like, I mean, why wouldn't you, like, I mean, there's not a lot of CEOs in the world. I mean, why wouldn't you be the CEO of this very, very large, very successful engineering firm that you have helped turn around? A headhunter reached out to my dad to turn around the engineering department. He ended up turning around basically the entire company from within. And I was like, Dad, like, this is all you've wanted from what I can gather. Like, you've earned this. Like, you really want this, don't you? And he said something to me that I've never forgotten ever since. He's like, you know, Sam, I know I could be CEO of the company, and that's good enough for me. If you are a top-performing, high-earning man in a corporate job, I have a free gift for you, the Value Economist Handbook. In this book, you will find a bulletproof, crystal clear, and step-by-step roadmap to build your values, systematize them into an unbeatable portfolio, and leverage them to create an unshakable identity that leads to fulfillment, meaning, and purpose. So, if you want a free copy, go down to the description below, fill out your information, and we'll send one over to you right away. Now, let's get back to today's video. And I was like, whoa. And so, you know, after my mind got melted and turned into milkshake, that was a turning point in my life because, you know, it showed me from a very, very direct perspective to by the way, by the person I look up to and still look up to most in my entire life. There's no one like my dad in my life. And I hope a lot of people feel that way. I feel that way about my dad, and my dad feels that way about his dad. And I feel that way about my grandfather, by the way. But it showed me openly that striving, that really just kind of working and toiling and doing all the things you need to do, it's not everything. And in fact, it can be really counterproductive to the life that you want to live. Because my dad, at the end of the day, even though it kind of took up most of his life or more of his life that he wanted to at that time especially, he was always doing it as a means and not to an end. He was always doing it to provide, to make sure that my sister was okay, to make sure that my mom was okay, to make sure his parents were okay, to make sure that my mom's mother was okay, who we paid basically all of her major bills for at a time. And so my dad, we need more people like my dad for a lot of reasons, but we need people more than my dad for this reason. And I've said this over and over again. And I think this is one of the most important things, if I've said anything important at all, that is really, really important that we need to hone in on as men. Our culture in America started to deteriorate as soon as men started chasing a bag over chasing righteousness. That is the single greatest point of failure to our culture being in the toilet. It is absent men. It is men not being there in the home. It is not men being in the communities, little league coaches, school board presidents, PTA members. It is not being there in the community, in the culture, in the social fabric. Instead, we have outsourced that to women. And I want to make this very clear. Women being home and around and in the home matters, especially for me. I would like that for my wife one day. But men, what we have done so foolishly, this is such a foolhardy thing that we've done. Men have reduced themselves to a revenue stream. We have reduced ourselves to one job. We only provide, and that's it. We don't protect, and we don't preside over our family, as Ryan Mickler says. We have abandoned our families. We have outsourced the protection of our children to the community. We are not there. We are not present inside of the lives, not nearly as much as we should be, of our children, of our wives, of our marriages. And by the way, I'm not a dad, I'm not married, but this is like all of the, I believe in this so strongly. Everything can be resolved by more present men inside of our culture. Everything gets better when the men stay home. That's not a shot at women, but that is a shot at men. It is a call to men. Men are the leaders of families. They are the leaders of communities alongside women. And without their voices, those communities fall apart. There is a reason why young people's mental health is worse than it could be. It's probably because a lot of dads aren't there. And yes, this is a call out to anyone watching this. And if you feel called out, good. It's because you need to do something about this. Go to your child's sporting events. The one thing I will always say about my dad, every single one of my sister's cheer competitions, every single one of my brother's marching band competitions, he missed, I think, a total of 2 games my entire career and never won on a Friday night or a Saturday morning when I played varsity or JV. I hardly didn't play varsity. I played a lot of JV because I wasn't good at football. But he never missed a track meet, never missed a football game, hardly ever missed a major thing that I was doing, National Honor Society, whatever. This is why our culture's falling apart. Women are very important to keeping the culture together. I've said for a long time, I said this in Toxic Maturity, which is behind me, men build culture, women help preserve and maintain culture. That's not saying that women can't do the inverse and men can't do the inverse, but I believe that is the primary role that we need to challenge men with. Men are builders. We're the pioneers. We're the people that go out there and do things. We need to learn how to kill this idol that we have over our hearts and over our lives in terms of, does money matter? Yes. Does striving at your job matter? Yes. Does bringing in revenue, particularly as a Christian, matter? Yes. All of these things matter. But we've made it into one thing that we cannot afford to make it into, an idol. We need to kill the idol of work as men. Working hard and long is an idol right now for men. The impulse is good. The impulse to provide is good. But it is not good if it demeans your most important responsibilities. Husband, father, figure in your community, leader in your church. Everything that you need to do inside of your community to make sure that even you working has any meaning to it at all. Because if you ask most men out there, they will tell you the exact same answer that my dad told you. And I would believe them, that they work to provide for their family. That's it. And that matters. But work is a means to an end. And I want to end with this, kind of talking about the alternative. I'm so glad that my dad told me this when he was still in the workforce, or he's still in the workforce, but when he was at his old job. Because I learned both from my dad and a lot of people that work with my dad that how dangerous this can be. I think this is dangerous if you don't end up doing so. And my dad had a coworker once. I didn't know this man all that well. I might have met him a couple times. But he was, again, a very successful person. My dad was an engineer. He was a product guy by trade, but he worked a lot with the business. And now he's more of a businessman than an engineer. But at the time, especially at his first job before he went on to become almost CEO of this other company, he worked a lot with the business sectors inside of his company because he was basically the product guy. He had to go in front of customers. So he had to work with a lot of sales guys, a lot of people in deal management, structuring, all that sort of thing. And so he was working with a guy, I believe, that was in sales. And this guy was a rock star at the company, cash cow, brought in money, overachieved, all of his other things, was very, very valuable to the organization. And he had 3 children, he had a wife, but he worked way too much. And I remember my dad told me this once, and this guy had, like I said, he had 3 kids. I believe he had two boys and a girl. And he would schedule calendar invites every day for an hour at the end of his day. Each of them had 20 minutes. And to that 20 minutes, give me the update on the day, how you doing, this, that, whatever. And then he'd get home at like 8 o'clock at night and do the whole thing over the next day for probably 6 or 7 days a week. That is not natural. That is not ethical. That's abusive, I would say, dare I say, to do that to your children. And one of his children eventually got so despondent and was probably looking for his dad, one of his boys, and eventually took his own life because of that, by ways of drugs. He got hooked on fentanyl and opiates, like so many people in my community have gone into. It's so horrible where we're from, especially in the Midwest, that people have to deal with this, but they do. And I remember that was very instructive to my dad because it kind of showed him, it's like, hey, dude, it's not worth your kids. It's not worth your family. It's not worth your wife. It's just not worth it. And I'm very glad that my dad was very open and honest about that because it showed me what was really important. And I've done my best to curate my life around making sure that I am honoring the people that honor the right things inside of their life. And I think that's really important.